tonight's tactical enhancement is Danish beer. And it looks like I need another one already. This evening we're playing Warhammer 8th edition, and I'm fielding the dwarves against Emilio's mixture of Chaos Dwarves and Ogres and assorted nose-picking riffraff. Alright, Emilio, talk us through what you got here.
Okay, so over this side we have Hobgoblin Cutthroats, and in with them they've got their Murder Boss and a Khan. So a solid little unit there of 2023. Next to them we've actually got my Hell Cannons. So there's one of 3 Hell Cannons that have a range of 12 inches up to 60 inches. So I can hit most things on this battlefield, and they hit really, really hard. Alongside them, we've got our Ogres, and with the Ogres, there's a Bruiser, and he's the Bruiser Battle Standard. Just hasn't got the Battle Standard. Apologise for that in advance. And then in the front row there, we've got our Infernal Guard, which are the Chaos Dwarves. There's 22 of them. And a Death Mask as a more elite member within that particular unit.
Oh, some poor bastard I strapped up on a pole here I hadn't noticed earlier. So these fellas seem to have been based for some other Games Workshop game that shall not be named here in the house of Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
That's it. Now, over this side, this giant's been used before, I think, Chaos Giant. I haven't used this Chaos Giant before. But he's hiding in the forest because he's seen some dwarf cannons over the other side, and at the same time he's been told to look after his own. So he's a bodyguard.
Yeah. He looks like he's had a long career of dieting on nothing but British beer.
And Empire troops.
Oh,
and then we've got a line of lead belchers, 4 lead belchers, which are facing directly across from big blocks of dwarves.
Yes, they're in good position, yeah.
And then another Hell Cannon that's also lining up for them as well, so lots of firepower.
Yeah.
These guys are called Nobblers, and they're best mates with the Ogres, and they've got some trappers in there.
That's what they tell themselves anyway.
So they're definitely not the elite, but they've got trappers with the Nobblers, so that will definitely slow things down for the enemy. And another big block of Iron Guts here.
Righto.
And also I've got my Tyrant, my Lord, that's in there.
Oh, yes.
And over this side are my favourites. We'll see how they go in this game, but they're definitely going to cause a headache for Chris. And they're our Mournfangs. So there's 4 of those. Cause fear, major impacts. So they're going to be an interesting lot. They move really, really fast. And in front of them are Hobgoblin Raiders.
Yeah, they're going to be
also, they move 9 inches. They're going to move really fast on that flank, and the Mournfang are going to keep up with them. So this flank is going to be very fast moving and heavy hitting. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in this game as well.
Well, hopefully it plays out with cannons, but we'll see how we go. Alright. Now facing the assorted chaos and beer-eating bastards, I've got 100 odd dwarf and 3 cannon. So the dwarf battle line is 24 longbeards, supported by a thane suitably tooled up, 49 warriors with great weapons and shields, and the longbeards have great weapons and shields too. Shields are useless in the melee, but they're good at slowing down all that gunfire that's going to be coming in. And there's a standard bearer here who's got a few runes, but one of them gives him a 4+ ward and gives everybody, or all units within 6 inches, a 5+ ward against shooting and magic missiles. That'll be very useful. And here we've got a block of 24 Ironbreakers, the old-fashioned metal ones. Much of this army dates to about 17 odd years ago. And the Dwarf Lord is there getting tanked, and he's got a bunch of runes that should make a right nuisance of himself. Keep him alive, I hope, and bash up something. Cannons are stock. They're on a hill. Seemed like a good idea, but I've lined them up less than optimally for hitting the targets, so we'll have to see how that works. Now, the very useful thing is that I've now got 2 units of 25 miners who will come in as ambushes on the back line and hopefully cause suitable amounts of disruption. These are the plastic ones that came out maybe a dozen years ago. Mixture of the multi-part kit and a few of the El Cheapos that came in one of the box sets. And here we've got the metal ones from God knows how many years ago that I bought over time in blister packs. And my little joke with these fellas was to paint them all with orange construction gloves, just to mark them out from the rest of the rank and file. Okay, now we will roll to see who has first turn. Highest dice roll wins. Well, that would be Emilio. Alright, so it's the end of the Chaos turn 1. They got to go first, which is just as well for them. Manoeuvring is a bit of a worry. That gun line is now in extreme danger from getting overrun. On the plus side, all that shooting, the Chaos Dwarf shooters were out of range, so they've moved up. The Ogre guns moved up just to be in range and killed a couple of guys. And those 3 Chaos Dwarf Hell Cannons, one of them blasted a bunch of dwarfs off of the main block here. I've lost 8 out of 49. The other 2 decided that they would eat their crew instead. Roll the same.
There's a silver lining.
2 misfires, 2 rolls of 2 on the monster table. Both of the Hell Cannons have eaten the handlers. But then they decide to get all affectionate about the handlers they've just eaten, so they're just going to sit there.
Not move.
Well, on the monster table it says guarding the bodies, but since they've eaten the bodies, we'll just leave the inner cognitive workings of cannons alone for the time being. But the problem is they can still fucking shoot as usual. So they're going to keep blasting away until we roll something else on the misfire table. And now it's over to the Dwarf turn 1, and we'll check in at the end of that. Well, the Dwarf turn was short. They moved up 6 inches as fast as they could. One cannon took a shot at the Hell Cannon over there, and the ball flew right over the top. And over here, the cannonballs managed to smack the Hobgoblin Wolf Riders, but then the bouncers were insufficient to actually do anything else. So all things considered, that was a very underwhelming turn. But then again, Emilio's shooting was also underwhelming for him. So not a lot to say about turn 1. We'll check in after the Chaos and Ogre turn 2. So we're partway into turn 2. The Hobgoblins charged the cannon, killed 2 crewmen, but the last plucky little bastard rolled double 1 in his morale, so he's still there. As for the shooting, well, they've been chipping away, but not done anything devastating as yet. So, yeah, only one of the cannon actually hit. But unfortunately, they didn't do anything to maul themselves this turn. What a shame. Now it's the start of Dwarf turn 2. I have 2 units to come in from reserve. Let's see how we go. Neither of them. Fuck me. I think I need more beer. I'll check in at the end of the Dwarf turn. Another very short Dwarf turn. One cannon hit the target, but then I fired at one of those whopping nasty Chaos cannons, but it passed its ward save. The other cannon misfired, but this meant it didn't fire this turn. So a whole lot of nothing, really. The good news is that in this melee happening here between the out of focus dwarf cannon, one guy, and that whole unit of wolf riders, they all managed to not do a damn thing to each other. So that cannon is still there, and those wolf riders are blocking the Mornfang cavalry, yeah, blocking them from doing anything. And because he moved them back, they're out of charge range, so they won't be able to kill anything next turn. Gives me another turn to try and roll more than a 1 or a 2 on either of those minor units. But now, over to turn 3 of the Ogres and Chaos Malarkey. Right, it's the end of the Chaos Dwarf and Ogre turn, what was this, turn 3. And in the melee, they did kill a cannon finally, although they're exposed. So I do have the option to try and blast the buggers a little bit. You can see how that goes. And the shooting has continued to chip away at these fellas. The one Chaos cannon that hit knocked an entire rank off of the Ironbreakers. And they've knocked 3 more guys off of the Clansmen as a result of those pricks there with their hand cannons. Over here, the Chaos Dwarfs have reformed into a block because they're a bit worried about being charged by these fellas when they're stuck in line. As for the other 2 Hell Cannons, one of them missed by a country mile and the other one ate the crew. Thing is, it already ate the crew, so we can only assume it regurgitated them and had another go. It's pretty fucking disgusting at that end of the table, quite frankly. But it's now the Dwarf turn 3, and we'll see if the Dwarf Miners turn up. Here we go. Come on, get it right, you bastards. Oh, that one's cocked. Come on, get it right, get it right. Oh, somebody fucking showed up. About time, you lost bastards. I'll check in again at the end of the Dwarf turn 3.
Oh my god.
At the end of turn 3, the cannon fired at those Mornfang cavalry and blasted one of them good and proper. Probably be the last hurrah before they cark it after actually doing nothing all day. And over here, the big block of Dwarf Clansmen, I misjudged what I needed to roll for them to make it into combat, and of course they whiffed. They only moved 2 inches. They sort of shuffled forward, having buggered it up completely. So I've moved up the infantry on either flank, and we'll see what happens with these shooters turned melee Chaos Dwarfs over there. And the miners turned up on the back rank and did a reform, so they are now in position to attack that cannon that's been blasting away at me all day. And they're positioned in such a way that nobody can charge them in melee, at least until I've had a round of combat against that cannon. Ooh, I'm getting far too much of Emilio's crotch on that shot. Let me just pan back and I'll check in at the end of the Chaos Dwarf turn. Shooting was almost exactly the same as what always happens. The lead belchers only killed 1 guy, but they've just been killing between 1 to 3 a turn. One of the cannons landed a shot on the Ironbreakers, did nothing. The second one missed, which it's managed to do fairly successfully every turn. And the third one misfired, which it's done just about every turn. And this time, instead of eating its crew for a second time, it decided to yield blood for the blood god and run 3D inches forward, which is only about 5 inches in the end. That fucker needs to be sacked.
And there was 1 casualty from the shootout.
Oh yeah. The Chaos Dwarfs did a bit of really underwhelming shooting and knocked off one of these fellas.
But over here, Chris.
Over here, well, now the Giants maneuvered around, so I thought he might. And these little riffraff have turned up. Yep. No idea if they'll do anything useful.
Just a flank attack.
So,
but there's a terror-causing monster.
It is a terror-causing monster, so I've got to pass a morale test to charge. And this could all go pear-shaped. We'll see. And at the start of the Dwarf turn 4, we have to get that other unit of miners on the table. Their absence is being noticed.
Wrong one.
Where
3.
the fuck did he go? 3? That's what we needed. Alright,
Okay.
they'll turn up. I'll check in again at the end of the dwarf turn 4. At the end of the dwarf turn 4, the Mournfang in the second in the row of the world's most unevenly balanced fight. Knocked off another cannon. They bumped off both just with their impact hits without even doing any actual fighting. But the good news is they're on the far opposite side of the battlefield from where the real fight is. So they're pretty much expended as a force. Now, I've got them exactly where I want them. I've moved up my infantry here. And I've got my rank and file here. The problem I'm finding is that this bloody cannon's unbreakable, so even though I won the combat, he's not going anywhere. And the giant's about to jump on, that'll be annoying. But Emilio has spent pretty much the entire game shuffling backwards, desperately trying to avoid a fight. While my short-legged little stumpies have been running forward for all they're worth.
Looking for a fight.
And not quite getting there. So we'll see if in turns 5 and 6 I can wrap up this flank. If I can do that, I can get the game. But yes, Emilio's efforts to avoid fighting have been very effective. So at the moment, it's anyone's game. I don't actually know if this bunch of miners are going to survive being jumped on by 2 monsters. They might. We'll see how we go. It's anyone's game. Things are finally starting to liven up. The giant charged into those dwarf miners who somehow managed to stick around. They took a mauling in the process. These cannon are getting a very large distaste for these bastards. They're over 200, well, they're 205 points each, and they shoot like bastards. They fight like bastards. Yeah, I may have to. Well, drink more alcohol, I think. I'm not sure what else you can do about that. Choose another game. It's not quite as stupid. Yeah, no. Over here, the general and army standard bearer and their unit of ogres charged into the iron breakers, and
broke some iron.
Broke some iron. Well, they did. They knocked a rank and a bit off of that unit. In return, I took 2 wounds off the general and killed an ogre. Not too bad. So that leaves us pretty much in position as far as I'm concerned. I've got to see what sort of charge I can get these guys into. And of course, his heavy calves coming up the back here, so I better do something constructive. Don't want to be charged in the ass. And he's done some redeployment, so those heavy infantry are approaching the trees. We'll see if that turns into a fight by the end of turn 6. And these shooters here, they took a few wounds off of this unit of warriors. Shot at from 2 directions, but they're just, again, chipping away a bit at a time. It's not been decisive as yet. So that's it for the Chaos turn 5. Over to the Dwarf turn 5. If you've been paying attention, you might notice something is missing from the table at this point. I actually managed to get the miners into the rear of Emilio's general's unit, and the big horde of dwarf warriors over there managed to get in the flank. They've actually since reformed after the combat, and the miners chased off the army standard bearer. So we smashed him, killed everything except the standard bearer, who fled. Miners chased him down, he's gone. Reformed the line, ready to take on what's left. Problem is, there's something else missing, and that's that block of miners. They didn't stand a fucking chance. I'm trying to figure out how I could have done that in a more intelligent way, but it's late. I've been drinking beer. Nothing intelligent's coming forward right now. So it's looking pretty good for the dwarf line. They're where they like to be, which is in the enemy deployment zone. But the ranks are thinned. We're missing a block of miners. And yeah, some big nasty stuff there. And it's turn 6, so it's the last turn, but it's the ogre's turn, so they can still get some charges in. And they could potentially charge in the flank of those longbeards, as well as getting the giant in there. Not sure what the rest of his army is going to do. We'll see. Even if I knew, I won't tell you. I want to keep you in suspense so you actually watch the end of this malarkey. Anyway, I'll check in at the end of the Ogre and Chaos Dwarf's turn 6. So this is the middle of turn 6. And unfortunately, after much toing and froing, this is a friendly match, Emilio decided to charge everything he could into the the Longbeards, and he killed the fucking lot of them outright, except for the Thane, who was down to his last wound, and he just took off and scarpered, and then got run down by a bunch of ogres.
Legs weren't long enough.
No, well, frankly, I don't blame him. He's a little outgunned in that fight. So that leaves me with 3 out of my 5 major melee units and 2 of my characters, and I'm probably down on points, actually. I need to make up some points in the last half of my turn. So I'm going to see if I can smash a couple of units over there. Bit touch and go at this point. This is looking very close to being a tie if I have a successful turn. Otherwise, I'm rooted. I mean, I got in there and I killed what I wanted to, but geez, I lost a hell of a lot in the process. The good news is that his cavalry, his heavy cavalry, did not quite make it into the back of the iron breakers, but if they had, it would have been a good fight. I reckon I could have probably killed them, actually. But alas, 'twas not to be. Anyway, I'll check in again at the end of turn 6, which will be the end of the game. Right, well, this game went the full 6 turns. In the last turn, alright, the dwarf general and the iron breakers smashed into the lead belchers and chased them off the table, what was left of them. The miners, by some miracle of dice rolling, actually caught up with the trappers and killed 4 of them and overran the remaining. I killed 6 of them and overran the remaining 4. 5 dwarves were taken out along the way. I'm not sure if that was necessarily an excellent trade in lives, but there you go. And the last thing that happened was the remains of my Death Star charged, suffered fear, but still managed to eke out just enough kills to bump off that fucking cannon. I hate those things with a passion. They wound me every game. So I bumped off 1 out of 3 of those bastards. And that was it. So what's left for the ogres is some riffraff light cavalry. Most of the Mournfang cavalry. I'm glad I didn't have to fight them too much in the melee. Unit of ogres, a giant,
A solid block.
a bunch of shooters that are largely untouched, some riffraff, and a couple of those fucking hell cannon. The dwarves, for what they're worth, they've got 1 almost complete block of miners. They've got about half a block of iron breakers with the general, and they have the army standard bearer in about 2/5 of that big Death Star of infantry. So we tallied up the points, and not counting bonuses for killing generals or half units or anything like that, which I think probably would balance out more or less. It comes into less than 100 points difference in a 3,000 point game. Yeah, we may have got some of the maths a bit more one way or the other way, I'm not sure, but to me, I think that's a tie.
That's a tie. That's close enough.
And what a bloody bloodbath of a tie that was. There's a lot of widows today.
Yeah.
All right, well, Emilio, what have we learned?
Well, always bring a giant. they haven't let me down. So the cannons, the dwarf cannons, were lost early, and there were too many targets for those cannons. They were too occupied on that flank. So the giant was left to run havoc. Look, my general did very well early on. He just, when you have 3 blocks of dwarf units surrounding my general, it was just too much. He was overwhelmed without the necessary support. So you did very well tactically to concentrate your attacks on my general and his unit. But otherwise, if we had another turn, I probably could have actually used that to advantage. But that's how the game goes. There was no magic in this game, so it moved a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think that helped me along somewhat.
Yeah.
Although it's worth noting, your mages do tend to do more damage to your own army than to mine. And there's a few choice examples there from recent games. Don't ever put a mage on a giant 6-wound monster creature.
Now, hell cannons, I'm absolutely convinced they didn't perform as well tonight, but I'm convinced that they are brutal. And something I'd love to bring with me in other battles.
I'm sure you'll find a way of having them every game. I have no answer to those fuckers. You can't shoot them. The ward save and the armor and toughness are just too much.
They still can attack without their crew, being a monster.
That's right. And yeah, your 2 cannons ate their crew 3 times. And in fact, I think you got like 4 rolls against crew. Both cannons ate their crew. One cannon regurgitated them and ate them again. The other cannon somehow turned around and killed them after it had eaten them.
And then moved forward, which could have actually improved his battle position. So look, I'm definitely very pleased with the hell cannons. And this is the first time I've played this army, so I know if I played this army with a bit more experience, I probably would have had the advantage.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's always live and learn. I mean, my strategy actually worked, and it was still only a tie. Mostly because I misunderstood just how much of a mongrel those hell cannons are in close combat. You need characters or...
Now, you normally win with those dwarves. So I'll take that result as a victory for me.
Yeah, I've had the dwarves a long time. For my money, Emilio did actually play a really good game. He edged back and edged back and edged back, shooting the whole damn time. So I've quite literally run to within a couple of inches of the enemy's table edge, just to get into the melee I needed to get into. So Emilio just maximised all the shots. The cannons were always going to be sacrificial on this hill. They're just there to knock stuff off before they inevitably got bumped off by all the stuff that Emilio always sends at cannons. And in fact, I won a couple of tournaments using that strategy. Problem is, the stuff the cannons were supposed to kill either never went near my main battle line, because my primary target for the cannons was actually these heavy cavalry who attacked the cannons. And they're actually the only thing I did damage to as well. I could have deployed the cannons better, actually. Got a few more shots, but as it was, everything else I shot at, they just didn't hit. So... yeah, Emilio did play a very good game. I think I played a reasonably good game in that my strategy worked. I just did the maths in my head then. I think I poured 1,700 points worth of a 3,000 point army into the general's unit in one turn. So that's what did the damage there. But I could have deployed my cannons a bit better, had a couple more shots, and I could have possibly done something smarter with the miners, but I haven't figured out what that smarter thing would have been yet.
You bring them on in the second turn.
Well, better dice rolls would have helped. Yeah. But with the dice rolls I got, I don't know, I reckon I could have put the miners further out in the flank. But everywhere I could have put them, there was something that could have attacked them. So, swings and roundabouts there. I have to think about that one a bit more. But yeah, that was a very satisfying game. With a very satisfying body count on both sides. So with that, thank you very much for watching if you made it all the way through, and it's time to call it a day.